Single dad's touching job interview with child exposed incredible CEO's unexpected transformation. Mark's palms were clammy, heart racing. Today could change everything. The factory walls loomed in his mind, with their clang and grind dulling his spirit for far too long. All for Lily. A job interview at a tech startup. This was a golden opportunity, but as he stared into the mirror, he hardly recognized the man looking back. Could he really transform their lives? Would he be swallowed whole in the world of cutthroat ambition? He thought about the sacrifices he'd made and the nights he'd spent worrying. As he helped Lily mix paints for her butterfly drawing, he felt a warmth swell within him, yet doubt gnawed at the corners of his mind. Would her colorful dreams be crushed beneath his failures? He dressed meticulously in his best improvised suit, a pressed shirt that was slightly faded and slacks that held the faintest scent of factory grease. Each step toward that building felt like crossing a chasm. The facade of success was there, but beneath it lay the gritty reality he knew too well. The interview space buzzed with polished professionals, their effortless conversations amplifying the chaos in his head. Mark sank into a chair, and for a moment, he let himself drift back to nights spent teaching Lily to ride a bike, the way she'd glowed with excitement. Fighting back the memories, he steadied his breathing, chastising himself for the flimsy hope dancing just beyond reach. Did he even belong here? The moment Karen entered, a chill swept through the room. Her reputation preceded her. This hardened CEO was a force of nature, and Mark found himself questioning whether his authenticity was enough. In a world driven by performance, would a single father's story resonate, or merely put him at a disadvantage? As he recounted his journey, his voice trembled, recounting nights spent double-checking bills, budgeting tricks he had mastered through desperate practice. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each revelation, Mark felt the weight of his conviction. He pulled out the butterfly drawing, fingers trembling as he presented it, a tangible representation of his little girl's hopes. This is what I'm fighting for, he said, his voice a whisper, growing louder with each word. His heart threatened to shatter. Would it resonate with her? He saw Karen's expression shift as she examined the drawing, her icy demeanor cracking just slightly. Maybe, just maybe, she could see a fraction of her own struggles reflected back at her. But then boom! The door burst open with urgency, a disruption that felt like a symphony of chaos tearing through his moment. Mark's heart sank as reality clawed back into focus. They shared a connection that spanned unspoken truths, yet everything hung in limbo. Would their worlds collide, or shatter apart? The stakes couldn't be higher, and all he could do was hold his breath, waiting for the next twist of fate. Mark held his breath, caught in a moment that felt suspended in time. The door had barely closed when Karen's gaze sharpened into focus, her expression shifting from vague interest to palpable urgency. The tension in the air vibrated with unspoken words, heavy with expectation. What had just interrupted them? What could possibly matter more than a single father's desperate bid for a better future? He could feel the pulse of his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, drowning out the arrival of another interviewer or an urgent call on her phone. Instead, the door swung open one more time and a young intern rushed in, holding a tablet tightly, frantically searching for the right words to deliver the distressing news. Mark's heart sank as he realized that whatever this was, it was important. "Karen," the intern stammered, "we have a crisis with the app rollout. A major bug is causing a significant delay, and we need to address this immediately." The impact of the words echoed in the room as Mark tried to catch the remnants of the connection they had just begun to develop. He fought against feelings of being overshadowed and irrelevant. Karen's eyes flickered between the screen and Mark, a storm of conflict swirling within her. She had a company to save, an empire teetering on the brink of chaos, but here sat a father who laid bare his soul and dreams for his daughter. "I'll need a moment," she finally said, her tone wavering but laced with authority. The intern nodded and slipped out just as quickly. Now was Mark's chance. He had witnessed a crack in the armor, a vulnerability. He could either retreat back into his bubble of self-doubt or confront this opportunity head-on. He took a deep breath, wrestled with his anxiety, and decided to respond. "I understand the urgency, but there's something important at play here. My story is not just about me. It reflects what drives people to excel in the face of adversity. It's about resilience." Karen's gaze hardened momentarily, but curiosity flickered in her eyes, just an ember, but enough for him to latch onto. He reached deep into the core of his resolve and continued, "Every challenge requires innovative solutions, and I'm willing to leverage my experiences as a single father to bring fresh perspectives to your team. I'll face obstacles here, just like I do at home. My life has been one long exercise in problem-solving and creative thinking. Isn't that what you need?" There, under the neon lighting of the Startup-esque conference room, Mark spoke with a fervor he had never expected to feel. The concept of being more than just a father, but a potential asset to the company, began to crystallize in his thoughts. For the first time, he was not sitting there only as a desperate job seeker but as someone with a valuable narrative, a story of survival and adaptability that could enrich the corporate environment. Karen shifted in her seat, leaning forward, intrigued. Maybe she was seeing potential in that darker butterfly drawing after all. The silence hung heavily as he awaited her response, but her tight expression revealed the conflict within her. How could she balance her duty as a CEO with recognizing the depth of human experience being laid bare before her? The moment hummed with suspended tension, and Mark's heart quickened. This could be the pivotal moment, the intersection of personal growth and professional opportunity. Would she see him as someone who could help lead them through the chaos, or remain fixated on the crisis before her? Whatever decision lay ahead, he stood at the threshold of a profound realization. To fight for Lily's dreams, he would need to fight for his own credibility as well. He sensed the tide might be shifting, but the looming question still echoed: could he convince her to see the value of his experiences? Could this tense moment be the genesis of not only a job offer but a transformative partnership? As he held on to the remnants of hope, he was ready to face the unexpected direction this narrative might take. Would he step forward into this new chapter or retreat into old fears? The uncertainty loomed. Mark's heartbeat thundered in his chest as he stared at Karen, the air thick with anticipation. It felt surreal. He had laid bare his vulnerabilities in front of one of the most powerful people he had ever encountered, and now, the stakes felt impossibly high. He could almost see the gears turning in her mind, wrestling with the priorities of her company against an emerging human element to drive the company's narrative needed. After a tense moment, Karen finally broke the silence, her voice steady but soft. "You're right. We do need innovative solutions right now, but..." Her gaze turned distant as her mind raced through the implications of what she was considering. She looked back at him, and Mark could see that her defenses were crumbling. "This is a chaotic time for us, and I can't afford to lose focus." "But you were compelling." His heart soared momentarily at her acknowledgement, yet a nagging doubt hung in the air. He had seen too many single fathers fail to land their dream jobs because of bias against their responsibilities at home. "If you bring me on, you're betting on someone who might need to leave early for father duties. But all I'm asking for is a chance to show you that I can produce." "Tell me about the projects you've managed," she said, brushing aside the emotional weight that hung like fog. "What kind of approaches have you implemented in your previous roles?" Mark shifted in his chair, straightened his back, and leaned into the challenge. It was time to highlight his competencies, to remind himself why he deserved this opportunity. "In my last role, I led a team to revolutionize a product's interface based on user feedback. We faced severe pushback, but I advocated for radically changing our approach. It paid off. Our user engagement shot up by 30%. I navigated the team through skepticism, much like how I navigate my home life, a balance of firmness grounded in compassion." An intrigued spark ignited in Karen's eyes. For a moment, she seemed to forget the looming crisis outside the door. He sensed her focus rooting deeper into the depths of his experiences, pushing through the layers of professional facade. "That's impressive," Karen said, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table, weighing the value of potential against existing commitments. "But it's a startup environment. Resources are scarce, and unpredictability is a constant companion." "I thrive in that chaos," Mark replied, his voice firm with conviction. "Every day at home is unpredictable, but I've built routines that allow me and my daughter to navigate it together. At work, I apply that flexibility creatively, turning pressure into motivation." She leaned back, weighing this newfound energy he exuded. The idea of chaos translation intrigued her, urging his connection with her to deepen beyond mere survival. This was about transformation. She made a decision and locked eyes with him. "You have a unique perspective, Mark. I'd like you to join an initial meeting with our dev team. They are struggling with the rollout issues, and I believe your viewpoint might catalyze new solutions." A rush of adrenaline surged through him. This was the bridge he had hoped for. But beneath the exhilaration, a whisper of doubt lingered. What if his insights failed to resonate with the industry professionals? Could he truly contribute in a room filled with those who spoke the language of tech fluency? "Before you go," Karen continued, sensing his hesitation, "I want you to think about something. There's room here for a story, a real narrative that blends your personal journey with the professional. You have the opportunity to disrupt the typical corporate image here." Mark nodded slowly. The gravity of that prospect inspired both excitement and fear. A step forward meant amplifying his story to the world, yet doing so risked authenticity lurking beneath corporate expectations. "Lily," he said softly to himself, recognizing he needed to stay true to who he was while evolving. Could he thrive with that dual narrative, as he pondered the significance of both his personal and professional entanglements? The silence grew, giving room for possibility. Mark glanced at Karen, catching her thoughtful gaze. "Okay," he said, "let's make this work." But as that possibility shimmered with promise, dread bubbled beneath the surface. The challenges ahead loomed large, and he could feel the shadows of his past creeping in, reminding him of failures that haunted him. Would he truly be ready for this? The moment of truth arrived, where personal growth and professional ambition clashed in compelling doubt. But could it also be the crucible of his redemption? In the wake of opportunity, uneasiness flickered. As Mark walked out of the conference room, the weight of his decision pressed heavily on him. Would embracing this transformative journey eclipse his past, or would it reveal vulnerabilities he wasn't prepared to face? The answer lay ahead, just beyond the next meeting. Mark had barely crossed the threshold out of the conference room when reality hit him like a wave. The bustling noise of the office felt overwhelming, a cacophony of voices and keyboards that pressed in around him. He took a moment, stepping back to catch his breath, to recalibrate his thoughts. The moment with Karen had ignited something within him, a sense of purpose entwined with palpable fear. He had been chosen to address the dev team, a group whose expertise felt galaxies away from his own but whose struggles mirrored the turbulence of his new challenge. As he navigated to the meeting room, he considered the weight of the story Karen had identified as pivotal. A story of transformation. To mark this narrative, he would have to be vulnerable, not just in a conventional sense, but in a way that he had never allowed himself in a professional setting. The thought set off a chain reaction of anxiety. Keeping Lily's needs fulfilled while immersing himself in the corporate world felt perilous, a delicate balancing act precariously swaying between ambition and obligation. Inside the meeting room, he found a gathering of faces both familiar and foreign. They were seated at a large, glass table, laptops open, fingers poised over keyboards, ready for strategic combat. The urgency of their conversation hung in the air, thick with purpose and tension. As Mark stepped forward, he felt an instinctual urge to retreat, to revert back to the comfort of anonymity he had worn at previous jobs, where he'd been just another cog in the corporate machine. "Hey, everyone," he began, his voice a little unsure but full of determination. "I'm Mark. Karen brought me in today to see if I can help with some of the rollout challenges you're facing." A few heads turned towards him, eyes heavy with skepticism. Any confidence he had begun to build faltered, causing him to stumble over his next words. I know you're under pressure, and I've had my fair share of chaotic projects as well. But I think what's missing here is a framework to deal with this unpredictability. Easy to say, someone shot back. Have you even worked in this capacity before? Every ounce of Mark's pulse quickened. Could he recapture the energy of his earlier conversation with Karen? Actually, yes. I managed a project where we had very few resources and an incredibly tight deadline. We had to spend hours troubleshooting and pivoting based on feedback, sort of like transforming in the moment. I believe something similar could work here if we embrace feedback loops and iterative adjustments. He watched as a couple of nods flickered in response, feeding his confidence like water to a sprouting seed. They asked for specifics, and he delivered, revealing insights and relatable stories from his past roles, each anecdote threading together the person he was becoming with the solutions he was proposing. As the conversation flowed, he found himself animated, allowing the initial dread to dissolve into engagement. It wasn't the tech jargon that captivated him, but the unraveling of people's frustrations and ideas as they revealed their own stories of struggle. Mark realized that moments of discomfort where he felt vulnerable transformed into powerful connections. The discussions turned to brainstorming. Ideas raced across the table with fervor, and Mark contributed eagerly, unearthing concepts he hadn't known lay dormant within him. Each thoughtful suggestion felt like a step towards reclaiming the narrative he feared would chain him to failure. After the meeting wrapped up, a few of the dev team members pulled him aside, their skepticism having pivoted into interest. They wanted to collaborate further, to flesh out the ideas he had early offered. It shook him, encouraged him to forge alliances he had not anticipated, yet beneath the exhilaration loomed the shadows of doubt. How sustainable was this energy? Even as he relished this new role, he questioned if he could maintain such momentum and still balance life at home. Those fears of vulnerability tightened their grip on him again, as concerns about how much of his personal life he could weave into the fabric of his professional journey clouded his thoughts. That he left the meeting feeling exhilarated yet haunted. Could he truly merge these two worlds without fracturing under the pressure? As he silently walked through the quiet corridors, he came to a realization: it was now more than just about being a single father or a hopeful professional, it was a journey of redefining what success looked like. The challenge loomed larger in front of him, and Mark knew he had to confront it head-on. But lurking around the corner, an unexpected development awaited him, a surprise choice that could alter the course of everything he was striving to accomplish. Would his next move fortify his position or unravel the thin threads he had begun to weave? Mark pressed his palms against the cool surface of the office's glass exterior as he glanced out at the city bustling below, the vibrant energy clashing with the swirling doubts inside him. He had made strides with the dev team, his enthusiasm igniting the room like a spark. Yet, the doubt about his sustainable success lingered, wrapping around his mind like creeping ivy, constricting his ability to think clearly. The balance between his professional endeavor and his responsibilities at home felt precarious. Each fleeting moment in the office was a reminder of the warmth he left behind with Lily, whose innocent laughter echoed in his mind. Suddenly, a thought flickered, a revelation that had lain dormant amidst the chaos of recent days. Mark needed to leverage his circumstances, intertwining his identity as a single father with his renewed role in the corporate world. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. With that insight, he grabbed a notebook and jotted down a plan. Instead of compartmentalizing his two worlds, he could weave them together. What if he shared directly from his experience as a father during the next meeting? It would be a step into vulnerability, but authenticity resonated powerfully with others. They were not just engineers or project managers like him, they were human beings shaped by their personal stories. As he put pen to paper, affirmations flooded his mind. This wasn't just about the work, it was about connection. A voice at the back of his mind cautioned him against exposing too much of his personal life, urging him to consider the consequences. Yet he felt a growing resolve. His experiences had cultivated resilience and innovation within him. Those were qualities that could enhance his credibility. The next day, as he prepared for another brainstorming session with the team, he felt a sharpened pulse of determination. He arrived ready to present this new perspective, weaving personal anecdotes into the context of their project. He envisioned sharing how Lily's imaginative world rejuvenated his creativity during moments of stress. Perhaps talking about a favorite story they enjoyed together, a tale of perseverance, would illustrate the value of perseverance when faced with adversity. "Let's kick off with some brainstorming," he said as he entered the room. The familiar gazes of his colleagues met him, but this time, instead of returning to a defensive stance, he held their attention confidently. As the meeting unfolded, Mark shared the challenges and cascading lessons he had learned as a father, how overlooking the small joys and everyday hurdles influenced his approach to solving project issues creatively. His words resonated, the team leaned in, nodding, smiling, and even laughing at the levity he managed to introduce. One developer shared, "It's true, those moments at home can inspire our best ideas at work. It's like drawing from a deeper well, igniting a flow of conversation fueled by mutual recognition." Yet amid the excitement, the specter of doubt returned. Mark saw potential harmony but feared the risk of judgment. Would revealing such personal insights ultimately edge him closer to acceptance or push him toward vulnerability that would backfire? The question gnawed at him as discussions heated, ideas bounced around, and excitement filled the air. As he spoke passionately about his vision, he felt invigorated, forcing himself to confront the nagging anxieties. He had to embrace this revelation of merging identities, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. This intersection could foster connections that would solidify his place on this challenging journey, but as the meeting wrapped and Mark began to step away, a sudden message pinged on his phone, an unexpected alert from the office suggesting a major restructuring. The implications rippled through his mind. What could that mean for his burgeoning role and his relationship with the team? He turned back, feeling that familiar mix of dread and anticipation. Was he on the brink of establishing something significant, or had he just painted a target on his back at a crucial moment? The echoes of risk and opportunity collided, and he sensed an approaching storm, one that could reshape his path completely. Would he weather the turmoil, or would it rush in, threatening the balance he sought to create? Mark stood at a precipice, heart racing as he prepared to face whatever awaited him next. Mark's fingers hovered over his phone, the message still bright on the screen, a call to arms, an impending upheaval. Between the uncertainty of his role and the revelations he had shared earlier that day, a sense of urgency and raw fear clawed at him. He had begun to build a unique rapport with his team, intertwining personal insights with professional ambition. Now, with the specter of restructuring looming, he sensed the ground shifting beneath him. What if the next phase of this corporate metamorphosis saw him cast aside for someone who adhered more rigidly to tradition, someone who wouldn't dare to expose their vulnerabilities? The weight of shoulders pressed against the confining glass walls of his office urged him into action. He had spoken about the intersection of his worlds, but now he must solidify it. Instead of hiding beneath piles of data and metrics, he needed to show them how he would thrive on this new path. The thought made his pulse quicken. He felt the rush of adrenaline mixing with a fierce resolve. As he prepared for the next meeting, Mark decided it was not just about defending his place. It would be a moment for a broader revelation. He could dynamically articulate his vision of a collaborative culture, one nurtured through authenticity. Leaning into the uncertain future, he picked up his notebook and began sketching out a proposal not only to advocate for his team's ideas, but to transparently articulate how their personal stories could redefine company values. "This isn't just numbers and directives," he scribbled furiously. "It's human connection, shared experiences. Our strengths are born from our trials." With every word, he crafted a narrative he hoped would resonate with leadership. He had to encapsulate his team's passion and creativity, contextualizing everything he had learned as a father. The meeting loomed like a titan before him. When the time arrived, he stepped in, breathing steadily, heart pounding beneath his shirt. As his colleagues settled into the conference room, he felt their eyes on him, their anticipation palpable. Mark opened with a concise recap of recent achievements, but then he transitioned, diving into the essence of the story he had drafted. "I want to talk about connection," he began cautiously, gauging their reactions. "Not just as a strategy, but as a necessity in our evolving corporate environment. What I shared before about my daughter isn't merely an anecdote, it's a testament to how creativity and innovation stem from understanding human experiences." Faces brightened, expressions shifted, he had their attention. Mark spoke passionately, weaving his anecdotes into the fabric of his message, detailing how vulnerability can catalyze creativity and how honest self-expression strengthens teams. It was long before the energy in the room transitioned from skepticism to engagement, ideas sparking between team members as they resonated with the framework he illustrated, yet as momentum built, a quiet doubt wormed its way back into Mark's thoughts. What if the executives dismissed this approach as too soft, too personal? Could a heartfelt call for collaboration stand against decisive corporate analytics? He fought to suppress the turmoil that accompanied this internal war while maintaining his outward confidence. The meeting reached its climax, a tide of momentum cascading as his colleagues rallied around him, united in their enthusiasm. The exhilaration was intoxicating, yet it came with an underlying tension, leave a lingering question. As Mark stepped out of the room with a surge of excitement, a knot formed in his stomach, tightening with anticipation. Just as hope flickered in his heart, another notification pinged on his phone, an invitation to meet with the new leadership team. The stakes had just elevated. What awaited him in that meeting? How could he continue to advocate for his vision when the shadows of uncertainty grew longer around him? The fragility of his progress pushed urgently against the reality of impending transformation, and he felt the ground shift yet. Again, marked at the edge of another critical moment, he resolved to face whatever challenge loomed ahead, but doubt nagged at him. Would his story find a place in the new design, or would it be erased before it ever truly began? Mark's heart raced as he stared at the blinking notification on his phone. The woman behind the leadership invitation was someone he respected but had never really engaged with. Emily Hart, the newly appointed CEO, known for her cutthroat business acumen and no-nonsense approach. Her reputation had preceded her, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she wouldn't be interested in the emotional appeal he had so passionately advocated for. As he made his way to the meeting, Mark mentally rehearsed his pitch, adjusting the trajectory of his thoughts with a pragmatic edge. The challenge was daunting. He had already experienced initial success in communicating his vision, but this was a new arena with higher stakes. Each step felt heavier than the last. As he pondered the possibility of rejection. Entering the conference room, he was confronted by a wall of polished confidence. The board members sat in quiet anticipation, their expressions a tableau of expectation. Emily sat at the head, a stark contrast to his approachable vision, her gaze sharp and discerning. He caught himself doubting his initial impulse to share personal narratives. Would they resonate here? "Thank you for coming, Mark," Emily began, her voice cutting through the tension. "We want to understand how you see your role evolving and how you can align your ideas with our new direction." Feeling a flash of courage, Mark took a deep breath. "I appreciate this opportunity," he said, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "I believe in our team. The culture we've begun to forge, one built on authenticity and human connection, can foster both creativity and stability." As he spoke, he could see shifting dynamics around the table. Some members exchanged glances, visibly intrigued by his approach, while others remained nonchalant, barely masking their skepticism. Mark pressed on, tapping into the energy that had sparked in his previous meeting. "I shared my experiences as a father before, but they taught me more than personal lessons. They illuminate our strengths when we embrace vulnerability. We have to communicate effectively and understand each other's stories. That's how real innovation takes root." At once, he felt the energy transform. Emily tilted her head, and though her expression was inscrutable, the tension she projected began to dissipate. Mark noticed he was gaining traction, his message finding resonance with others, yet, just when he felt a glimmer of hope, Mark summoned the courage to confront the elephant in the room. "We've had success, but I understand the need for a more traditional approach in an uncertain climate. However, I challenge us to consider what we might lose if we prioritize metrics over empathy. We must ask ourselves, can we afford to avoid deeper engagement during this transformation?" Silence fell, palpable and profound. All eyes seemed to fixate on Mark. Emily's expression morphed into something else, curious, perhaps even vulnerable. In that fleeting moment, a flicker of understanding passed through the room. "Interesting perspective," she finally said. "But tell me, how do you propose to implement this during restructuring?" Mark felt the tide shift in his favor as he poured out specific strategies. He illustrated how regularly scheduled team check-ins could create a culture of accountability and openness, potentially translating personal stories into innovative ideas that aligned with corporate goals. The idealistic youth of his thoughts found a companion in the cold logic of business. The meeting concluded, but an uncomfortable tension lingered. While Mark left with a burgeoning sense of accomplishment, the fear that plagued him before had transformed. This time it was charged with urgency. The atmosphere had shifted, but had it truly turned in his favor? As he reflected on the unexpected dynamics in the room, he questioned if he had revealed enough of himself. Had he shown his vulnerabilities without overextending himself? The risk of sharing too much could come at a high cost, especially in an environment dominated by hard evidence and bottom lines. As he stepped into the hallway, a message flashed through his mind. Was he ready to fight for this new vision? In the coming days, he pondered a crucial truth: what was he willing to sacrifice to preserve a culture he believed in? The lure of conformity beckoned, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the precipice of something transformative. The stakes were higher. With every ounce of determination swelling in his chest, Mark resolved to leverage even the time he spent as a father as a tool for cultivating this environment. But would it be enough to persuade the executive team? His next steps would determine whether he could navigate the tremors of change or be swept away. As he prepared for what lay ahead, a question echoed in the chambers of his mind: was it mere optimism, or could his vision truly alter the course of the company? The answer awaited him in the unraveling paths of opportunity and resistance. The weeks rolled on, a blend of visceral anticipation and creeping unease punctuating Mark's routine. Each day unfolded like a new chapter of an unsteady book, filled with suspense and possibility. Feedback from the meeting with Emily had not come swiftly. Instead, there was a lingering silence within the executive corridors that crawled under his skin. That he found himself cycling through his thoughts, wrestling with the implications of his actions. Mark's fixation on his vision couldn't overpower the gnawing dread that his approach might have been too unconventional. With every tick of the clock, he pondered his next steps, envisioning scenarios in which he led with greater tenacity or withdrew into safer waters. Yet, in those quiet moments, he recognized that the concept of authenticity continually beckoned him. His interactions with colleagues now felt more fraught, as if each exchange carried the weight of his professional aspirations. He tried to gauge their reactions to his ideas. Some appeared supportive, but others seemed to retreat behind a veil of skepticism. The vibrant, engaged Mark who had entered the conference room now wrestled with a shadow from within, burgeoning self-doubt and the anxiety of navigating the corporate labyrinth. One afternoon, as he wrapped up a mundane meeting with the marketing team, he noticed the newcomer, Ava, who had joined them nearly a month prior. She was bright and earnest, often pushing back against conventional ideas with refreshing candor. He sensed an opportunity and decided it was time to engage her more deeply. After the meeting, he caught her in the hallway. "Ava, do you have a moment?" he asked, feeling the weight of his unshared doubts ripple in his stomach. "Sure, Mark. What's up?" she replied, her bright eyes curious. "I'd love your insight on a project I'm developing. It's focused on the human connection we need to build as we restructure," he started, immediately pausing to evaluate her interest. "Sounds interesting. What's your vision?" she probed. He launched into his thoughts, exploring the idea of incorporating storytelling into team-building exercises. As he shared his plans, Mark felt the sparks of inspiration lighting the corners of his mind. Ava listened intently, offering feedback peppered with perspectives he had not previously considered. Her input invigorated him. By the end of their conversation, Mark was more certain of his direction. Compulsively driven, he jotted notes detailing their discussion, which sparked a new strategy leveraging the unique stories of employees to create a stronger workplace connection. As someone who had placed personal anecdotes at the forefront of his pitch, he now gleaned assurance from the understanding that stories could come not just from him, but from everyone. Days later, he found himself standing at his desk late into the evening, piecing together a presentation for the next executive meeting. He could visualize Emily's reaction if he showcased this collective narrative approach. Would she embrace the idea? Or stiffen with skepticism again? It was a risky gambit but one that felt absolutely necessary for the future he envisioned. As he refined his slides, thoughts of colleagues resonating with their own truths filled his mind. How would they respond to a more inclusive gathering where each voice was a thread in the broader narrative? The emotional stakes were high. With a plan taking form, Mark faced a pivotal realization: he had to step beyond personal ambition and focus on nurturing a larger vision. If he were to persuade Emily and the board, he would need to invite his colleagues into the conversation not just as audience members, but as active participants. As the moon cast shadows through the office windows, he resolved to speak up, not quietly or submissively but with an authority he had yet to fully claim. The following day loomed large in his imagination, filled with potentially life-altering consequences. Was he daring enough to lead this new discussion? Emerging from the depths of doubt, Mark's determination crystallized. It was time to assert the vision that both terrified and enthralled him. The moment had arrived to see if he could draw others into the narrative as he assessed their willingness to embrace vulnerability. Could this collective engagement cast a new light on his presidency's future? Yet, as dawn broke on the horizon, a gnawing thought persisted: was he ready to contend with the board's response when he unveiled this dynamic approach? Would they welcome it or rebuff it entirely? Such ambiguity heightened the urgency in his veins as the hours slid away toward the meeting, resolving to spark change or risk isolation. Mark entered the conference room, the air heavy with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He had rehearsed his pitch countless times, but the stakes felt immeasurably higher now that he had decided to weave vulnerability into his narrative. The dynamics in the room shifted. He had observed the board intently during previous presentations, noting their skepticism and rigid demeanor. Today, however, he was determined to challenge their comfort zones, and in doing so, challenge himself. He took a deep breath as he approached the podium, scanning the faces of the executives seated before him. Emily's gaze was penetrating, as always, but there was a glimmer of curiosity that made him hope she might be ready for something new. "Thank you for being here today," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "What I bring forth is not just a plan but a call for us to engage with each other, to embrace our stories. Each of us has an experience that shapes our perspectives, and I want us to utilize that to foster a stronger workplace connection." As he advanced through the presentation, Mark's carefully chosen words became infused with passion, a stark contrast to the sterile data typically expected in such meetings. He described how, by sharing personal narratives, they could create a culture centered around empathy and understanding. The room remained quiet, and in the silence, he felt his pulse quickening. Was he being heard, or simply dismissed? Mark had reached a crucial part of his presentation, the part where he would invite his colleagues to share their stories. In that pivotal moment, he faltered, flooded by a wave of uncertainty. Would they see the vulnerability he was trying to share as a weakness? Or as an opportunity for collective growth? A bead of sweat dripped down his back as he wrestled with those thoughts. "What I propose," he continued, "is to hold an inclusive workshop where everyone can share their personal experiences, achievements, struggles, or even moments that transformed their perspectives. It's something different, but I believe it could revolutionize our team dynamics and align us more closely with our mission." A murmur traveled through the board, a chorus of whispers swirling around skepticism and speculation. Mark's heart sank momentarily, but something deeper inside him ignited confidence, burned alongside the despair. He had taken the leap. Now, he needed to let go and trust that in that charged atmosphere. His mind drifted to Ava's enthusiasm and the excitement in her eyes during their conversations. He imagined her, along with others, standing before the board alongside him, sharing their unique narratives. Perhaps it would normalize vulnerability within their corporate fabric. Suddenly, Emily interrupted his reverie. "Mark, it's certainly an unconventional approach," she said, her tone surprisingly open. "But you must understand, people may be hesitant. This isn't just about the business, it's about affecting lives, our lives." Her acknowledgement fueled Mark. He lowered his voice. "Exactly. That's why I believe it's so necessary. We can't just focus on figures, we must consider our humanity. This engagement could breathe new life into our organization." The tension in the room vibrated, and for a brief moment, Mark could see curiosity flickering in the eyes of some of the board members. Emily regarded him thoughtfully, and he sensed a shift. Was it hope, or was it the preamble to resistance? It was impossible to know just yet, but then the door swung open with a dramatic creak, interrupting the session, and an unexpected figure stepped through, the CEO of another department, wild-eyed and clearly agitated. Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had only seen him once before. This was a powerful man, and the disruption he brought wasn't just physical but potentially upheaving. "Sorry, I overheard what's this about stories?" the CEO challenged, eyebrows knitted in skepticism. A ripple of anxiety washed over Mark. The very thing he sought to encourage was now seemingly an explosive catalyst for resistance. Mark took one long look at the CEO, feeling the weight of the moment. This was a defining juncture, and it could either bolster his vision or crush it underfoot. Would he have the courage to confront the skepticism head-on, or would he shrink into the shadows of doubt? As the room fell silent in anticipation of his response, Mark realized he needed to seize the moment not just for himself, but for everyone who had dared to trust him with their stories. Would he proceed boldly, or would he retreat into the safety of convention? The answer hung palpably in the air, demanding resolution as uncertainty loomed like a storm on the horizon. Mark stood at the precipice of his transformation, poised to confront the sudden disruption that could define his future. The weight of skepticism in the room pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he drew strength from the conviction that had brought him this far. He had woven a narrative of vulnerability that was inviting, and he wouldn't let it be easily dismissed. "Stories matter because they are the threads that connect us," Mark said, steadying his voice and meeting the wild-eyed CEO's gaze. "They shape how we work together and how we innovate. In today's fast-paced environment, reliance solely on numbers isn't enough. We must foster a culture that embraces our humanity to leverage our full potential." He felt the room shift as murmurs circulated. Some executives leaned in, intrigued, while others exchanged skeptical glances. But Mark pressed on, maintaining eye contact, expressing an earnest passion for creating a robust team culture. "Imagine a workplace where our triumphs and struggles intermingle, inspiring deep collaboration. We're not just statistics, we're people with unique experiences that can drive innovation. If we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to share our stories, we can build authentic relationships that fuel creativity and team cohesion." Mark's words hung in the air, resonating with a raw energy he had never experienced before in a corporate setting. The grip of fear he had felt earlier transformed into a burgeoning confidence, dispelling uncertainty as he painted a vivid picture of what could be a workplace where individuals' identities flourished instead of being masked by conventional expectations. The skeptical CEO folded his arms, leveling Mark with a mix of challenge and interest. "You say that, but how do you plan to harness such emotional engagement and still deliver results? In a restructuring, we cannot afford to lose focus." By recognizing that productivity does not preclude emotional authenticity, Mark countered, his tone clear and unwavering. "A motivated team that feels heard is a team that performs better. I propose we initiate workshops based on shared storytelling, a revolutionizing approach to team building where individuals learn to voice their unique experiences. This can yield not just a deeper emotional bond but can also spur innovative thinking and solutions during our restructuring efforts." Silence flowed through the room as the weight of his proposition settled. Emily leaned forward, her gaze sharp but contemplative. "And what will this look like in practice?" "I envision monthly gatherings where team members come together to share their stories in safe and supportive environments, connecting their personal experiences with professional objectives. We can provide a framework where everyone's voice matters, enabling collaborations based on understanding," Mark replied, an excited passion coursing through his veins. "There's a fine line between personal and professional," the CEO said, still evaluating, but Mark felt he was gaining traction with each word. "That line can be what binds us," Mark insisted, allowing us to empathize with one another, promoting resilience when challenges arise. "I believe authenticity will be our greatest tool in navigating upcoming transitions." As his message settled, Mark sensed a stirring in the room. the executives were engaged, seeing glimpses of opportunity within the risk. Emily turned to her fellow board members, her expression softened. Thoughts? Slowly, nods began to appear among them. The tension that had filled the space was yielding to curiosity. Mark's heart swelled. This was a critical turning point. "We should allow Mark to pilot the first workshop," Emily said, her tone decisively unlocking the potential for his vision. "Let us see how this plays out before the restructuring proceeds. We can review the impact of emotional engagement on productivity together." The murmurs of agreement solidified the change in direction, and with a rush of exhilaration, Mark felt a powerful mixture of relief and triumph. He had not only articulated a vision for a workplace restructuring but had also found common ground in a culture typically steeped in hard data and rigid structures. After the meeting, as he stepped out of the boardroom, Mark's inner landscape had transformed. He had conquered self-doubt head-on and emerged as a man who had ushered in a new path forward, one that integrated his personal journey with professional aspirations, redefining success within the walls of the corporation. In the days following the workshop announcement, Mark poured his heart into organizing the sessions. With support from Ava and newfound allies among his colleagues, they crafted a space where storytelling unleashed creativity, collaboration, and, most importantly, humanity among their peers. Each session enriched their workplace environment, featuring laughter, connection, and even tears that fostered mutual respect and innovative collaboration. Mark thrived in this new role, witnessing direct evidence of how vulnerability bred strength, productivity blossomed, and how their connections fueled incredible outcomes. Recognition soon followed. Emily commended him during a corporate meeting for unlocking a new dynamic within the team, pointing out an increase in overall morale and productivity metrics since implementing his workshops. As he looked around the room, pride filled him as he saw faces of colleagues no longer just co-workers, but trusted collaborators. The transformation was not solely in the structure of the workplace but within Mark himself. He had proven not just to his peers, but to himself, that he could intertwine his identity as a single father with his leadership aspirations, navigating both worlds with confidence and competence. This was his success, accepting who he was while propelling his career forward, breaking down barriers in a landscape he once thought impenetrable. Mark's heart swelled as he watched the butterfly drawing Lily had created some months earlier now prominently displayed on a shared team board, reminding him daily of the dream that had initially prompted his journey. He had turned his narrative of vulnerability into a strength not only for himself but for the entire organization. This victory stood as a beacon, a testament that authentic leadership could reshape corporate landscapes and in doing so, affirm the dreams of a father who had fought against overwhelming odds and emerged victorious. Now, as the final curtain of this chapter draws, it beckons each of you. If you felt inspired by this journey of overcoming obstacles with authenticity, you need to subscribe now to experience more riveting stories. Leave a like now if you believe in the power of transformation and the strength hidden within vulnerability. Share your thoughts in the comments about this poignant resolution, and don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness how one man's courage led to remarkable change. This is the moment to show your support for stories that matter.